If you think your life is hard, wait until you hear about the boy who slept under a bridge and built a future no one believed he deserved. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe, because stories like this don't just entertain, they change perspective, and this one might change yours. His name was Adam Rivera. He was 11 years old the first night he realized hunger can make you dizzy. Not the kind of hunger where you skip dinner, the kind where your body shakes, the kind where you drink water just to feel full, the kind where you pretend you already ate so your little sister doesn't notice. Adam didn't live in the worst part of the city. He lived under it. Under the Jefferson Bridge, where concrete pillars held up thousands of cars every day, there was a small hidden corner behind rusted metal sheets and old plywood. That was home. Not because he chose it, because rent went up, because his father left, because his mother got sick. Because sometimes life doesn't collapse loudly, it collapses quietly, and no one notices. Adam used to love school. He was good at math. Numbers made sense when nothing else did. Numbers followed rules. They didn't disappear overnight. But by 5th grade, his uniform didn't fit anymore. His shoes were 2 sizes too small. He walked differently, so no one would see the cracks in the soles. Kids notice everything, especially weakness. "Why do you smell weird?" one boy asked once. Adam laughed. He always laughed, because laughing is cheaper than explaining. Every morning at 5:30 a.m., Adam woke up before the city did. He'd quietly fold the thin blanket he shared with his mother and sister. He'd walk 3 blocks to a gas station bathroom to wash his face. Cold water, paper towels. He'd practice smiling in the mirror, because if you smile long enough, sometimes people don't ask questions. His mother, Elena, used to work at a bakery. When she got sick, she said it was just exhaustion. When she started coughing blood, she said it was allergies. When she couldn't stand up anymore, she stopped saying anything. Hospitals require insurance. Medicine requires money. Hope requires energy. They were running out of all 3. One afternoon, something happened that changed Adam. He came home, if you can call it that, and found his sister, Mia, crying quietly. She was 8. She had been pretending not to be hungry. "I'm okay," she whispered, but her hands were shaking. Adam looked at the empty plastic bag where bread used to be, and something inside him shifted. Not anger, not fear, decision. That night, Adam made a promise no 11-year-old should have to make. "I'll fix this." The next morning, instead of going straight to school, Adam walked downtown. He looked at buildings, tall ones, clean ones, powerful ones. He didn't see glass and steel. He saw opportunity. He walked into a small electronics repair shop. The owner, Mr. Harris, looked up. "You lost, kid?" Adam shook his head. "No, sir. I can work." Mr. Harris laughed. "You're 11. I can learn." Silence. Mr. Harris studied him carefully. Most kids that age ask for toys. This one asked for work. "After school," the man finally said, "sweep floors, $10. $10. To Adam, that was oxygen. He worked every day, after school, weekends, holidays. He learned how to repair cracked phone screens, how to solder tiny circuits, how to diagnose broken devices. Technology became his escape and his weapon. While other kids played video games, Adam fixed the consoles they broke. While classmates talked about vacations, Adam calculated medication costs. He never complained. He never asked for pity. He just worked. But the world isn't kind just because you're trying. One rainy night, city officials cleared the area under the bridge. "No camping," they said. Adam watched as their blankets were thrown into a truck, watched as their small world disappeared in minutes. His mother tried to stand and collapsed. Mia cried. Adam didn't. He picked up what little they had left and walked. Rain soaking through his shirt, cars driving past, people looking away. That was the night he realized something brutal. If you don't have money, you're invisible. They moved into a shelter, crowded, loud, unpredictable. Adam hated it, not because of the noise, because he couldn't protect them there. He started sleeping lightly, waking at every sound. 11 years old, and already guarding the world. Then something unexpected happened. Mr. Harris noticed. "You're tired," he said one day. "I'm fine." "You're not fine." Silence. Eventually, the truth slipped out. Not dramatic, just facts. Bridge, shelter, mother sick, sister hungry. Mr. Harris didn't say much, but the next week he did something small. He paid Adam for full-time hours, even when he worked part-time. Adam didn't notice at first. When he did, he tried to refuse. "Take it," he said. "Consider it an investment." "In what?" Mr. Harris didn't answer. Months passed. Adam's skills improved fast. He wasn't just fixing devices, he was understanding systems, why they failed, how to improve them. One evening, he stayed late experimenting with old discarded parts. He built something simple, a low-cost portable charging device made from recycled batteries. It wasn't pretty, but it worked, and it cost almost nothing. Mr. Harris stared at it. "Do you know what you just built?" "A charger." "No," Mr. Harris said softly. "A product." That word changed everything. Product, value, scale. Adam began designing more. Affordable tech tools using scrap parts, low-cost power banks, budget repair kits, community charging stations. He wasn't thinking about profit, he was thinking about survival. But survival can become innovation. Meanwhile, his mother's health declined. Some nights, Adam held her hand while she slept. "Promise me something," she whispered. "What?" "Don't let this make you hard." Adam didn't understand then. He would later. A local community center agreed to test Adam's charging units. They worked. Word spread. A small local news blog wrote about the 12-year-old tech fixer. Donations came, small at first, then bigger. Not because people pitied him, because they admired him. There's a difference. Adam never told the full story publicly. He didn't want sympathy, he wanted opportunity. At 13, he registered a small repair service. At 14, he secured a partnership with a local nonprofit. At 15, he moved his family into a small apartment. Not luxury, but walls, a door that locked, a kitchen with real cabinets. The first night there, Mia cried. Not from sadness, from safety. But success didn't erase the past. Adam still flinched at loud noises, still saved every dollar, still feared losing everything overnight. Trauma doesn't disappear when rent is paid. It lingers, but so does strength. By 16, Adam had turned scrap electronics into a community-based micro-business. By 17, he was teaching other low-income kids how to repair devices. By 18, he launched a startup focused on affordable energy solutions. Investors called him brilliant. They didn't know he was just hungry once, and hunger teaches efficiency. Years later, during an interview, a reporter asked, "What motivated you?" Adam paused. He could have said ambition. He could have said passion. Instead, he said, "I was tired of being invisible." His mother didn't live to see his biggest success, but she saw him safe, and sometimes that's enough. On the wall of his office, Adam keeps something framed. Not an award, not a certificate, a torn piece of cardboard from under the bridge, because he never wants to forget the night he promised, "I'll fix this." And he did. Not just for himself, for others. For kids who still wake up at 5:30 a.m. pretending everything is fine. For children who laugh when asked why they smell weird. For families who disappear quietly. Adam never liked interviews. Cameras made him uncomfortable. Not because he was shy, but because he remembered what it felt like when no one was watching. Fame is strange when you've experienced invisibility. At 19, his company wasn't massive. It wasn't Silicon Valley giant level, but it was stable. He called it Second Spark Energy. The idea was simple: affordable, repairable, modular power systems for low-income neighborhoods. He didn't believe in designing products people couldn't fix. He believed in teaching people how to fix them, because dependency felt too much like the bridge. But success brings pressure. Investors wanted scaling. Scaling meant higher margins. Higher margins meant cutting the very affordability that made his mission meaningful. "Raise prices," one advisor said. "You're undervaluing yourself." Adam stared at the spreadsheet. He knew they were right, financially, but he also remembered the way Mia's hands shook when she said she wasn't hungry. He remembered counting coins for medicine. He remembered the way shelter lights never fully turned off at night, and he said no. That decision almost destroyed everything. 2 major investors pulled out. Cash flow tightened. Payroll became stressful. Adam didn't sleep for 3 days straight. He sat alone in his small office at 2:17 a.m., the same time the sky had changed in another story, another life. Funny how certain hours feel heavier. He stared at the city lights outside. For a moment, fear returned. Not the childish fear of monsters, the adult fear of failing others. Because when you build something bigger than yourself, failure doesn't just hurt you, it ripples outward. Adam leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. He wasn't afraid of being poor again. He was afraid of disappointing the kids who had started showing up at his weekend repair workshops. Kids who reminded him of himself. Quiet ones, observant ones. The kind teachers call potential, but society calls at risk. He opened his laptop and started rewriting the business model from scratch. If investors wouldn't support low-cost systems, he would create a parallel structure. Community ownership, micro-shares, local partnerships. Instead of scaling up the traditional way, he would scale outward. Let neighborhoods own the energy systems. Let families invest small amounts. Let profits circulate locally. It wasn't conventional, but neither was sleeping under a bridge and becoming a CEO. The next 6 months were brutal. Adam worked 16-hour days. He traveled by bus instead of flights. He negotiated with suppliers personally. He cut his own salary to near zero. He never told his mother. She still thought he was just fixing computers. Sometimes protecting someone means letting them believe you're not carrying weight. One afternoon, something happened that nearly broke him. He visited the old Jefferson Bridge. He hadn't gone back in years. The concrete pillars were still there. The city had cleaned the area. No blankets, no plywood, no hidden corners. It looked ordinary, like nothing had ever happened. Adam stood there longer than he expected. People walked past him. No one knew. No one would ever guess that under this exact slab of concrete, an 11-year-old once promised to fix the world. He touched the pillar lightly. Cold, solid, unmoved by memory. And suddenly, anger surfaced. Not rage, not violence, but a deep frustration. Why had it been so hard? Why do children have to be strong before they're ready? Why is survival sometimes a full-time job for kids? He didn't cry. He rarely did. But something inside him softened. He realized something important. He had built success from fear. Now he needed to build from purpose. That shift changed everything. Second Spark Energy stopped marketing itself as a startup. It rebranded as a movement. They began hosting open workshops in schools, free repair training, financial literacy sessions for teenagers, micro-entrepreneur programs. Instead of just selling devices, they taught repair skills. Instead of just offering energy systems, they built community hubs. It wasn't fast growth, but it was deep growth. At 21, Adam gave his first major public speech. He stood on stage in a modest suit, lights bright, audience quiet.
He didn't talk about revenue. He didn't show profit charts. He told a story about a boy who laughed when kids asked why he smelled weird, about drinking water to feel full, about folding blankets at 5:30 a.m. so his sister wouldn't wake cold. The room went silent, not because it was dramatic, because it was honest, and honesty hits harder than exaggeration. When he finished, no one clapped immediately. They stood, one by one, and then the applause came. Not for a businessman, for a survivor who chose to remain kind. Kindness. That word echoed in his mind for weeks. His mother's voice returned. Don't let this make you hard. He finally understood. Pain can sharpen you, but it can also harden you. Adam had chosen sharpness without cruelty. That was rare. At 23, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived, handwritten, from a boy named Lucas. Dear Mr. Rivera, I saw your video. My mom and I live in a motel right now. I fix broken phones at school sometimes for money. I want to build something like you did. How did you not give up? Adam read the letter 3 times. He didn't remember anyone asking him that when he was 11. He sat down and wrote back personally. He didn't give motivational quotes. He gave instructions. Learn one skill deeply. Protect your energy. Help one person even when you feel empty. And never confuse your current situation with your permanent identity. Weeks later, Lucas sent a picture. A small repair station in the motel lobby. It wasn't impressive, but it was a beginning. Adam framed that photo too, because success isn't always measured by how high you rise. Sometimes it's measured by who rises with you. As Second Spark grew, critics appeared. Some said he romanticized poverty. Some said he should maximize profit. Some said his approach was naive. Adam listened. Criticism didn't scare him. Silence used to. He refined strategies, improved efficiency, negotiated smarter. He wasn't the 11-year-old under the bridge anymore. He was a strategist, but he never let the bridge disappear from memory. At 25, he launched a national initiative, Repair Before Replace, a campaign encouraging low-income communities to repair electronics rather than discard them. It reduced waste, created
Success
jobs,
did not make Adam
saved
fearless.
families money.
It made him
Governments
visible.
took notice.
And visibility
Partnership
carries
offers
a different
increased.
kind of pressure.
Investors returned.
By 32,
This time,
Second
he
Spark
chose
Energy
carefully.
had expanded into
No
12
one who pushed
states.
affordability
Community-owned
aside stayed
solar
long.
grids powered schools,
He had learned something
shelters, and small
essential.
businesses.
Money
Repair
is
hubs
powerful,
were operating
but
in
a lot-
neighborhoods that had once been considered economically hopeless. But with growth came complexity, regulations, politics, competition. Large corporations began entering the affordable energy space, not because they suddenly cared, but because they saw profit in reputation. They copied the language, community, empowerment, access, but their pricing structures told a different story. Adam watched carefully. He had learned something important under the bridge. Not everyone who offers help intends to protect you. One evening, he received an offer. A massive energy conglomerate wanted to acquire Second Spark. The number was life-changing. Generational wealth, guaranteed expansion, security forever. His board was ecstatic. Think of what you could do with their capital. Think of what you could lose, he thought quietly. He asked one question during the negotiation meeting. If you acquire us, do prices remain capped for low-income communities? Silence. Polite corporate silence. We'll review pricing structures for long-term sustainability. He knew what that meant. Higher margins, higher barriers, lower access. He declined. The board was divided. Some left. Media headlines called him reckless. He slept peacefully at night, because sometimes security isn't financial. Sometimes it's moral. Around that time, something unexpected happened. He received another letter, this one from a prison. A man named Carlos wrote, I was released last year. I grew up like you. I saw your speech online. I've been teaching repair skills to other guys in transitional housing. I think we can build something. Adam stared at the envelope for a long time. The bridge had taught him survival,
but life had taught him expansion. He met Carlos in person. The man was older, weathered, sincere. They built a re-entry repair program together. Former inmates trained in electronics repair and micro-solar installation. Employment rates soared, recidivism dropped. Adam saw something powerful. When you give people skills instead of sympathy, they build dignity. But success still carried shadows. Adam rarely talked about his anxiety. He still woke early, still checked accounts obsessively, still feared collapse. Scarcity leaves fingerprints on the mind, even after abundance arrives. One afternoon, during a routine health check, his doctor asked, "Do you ever rest?" Adam smiled. "I'm fine." He had said that before, many times. But this time, the doctor didn't laugh. "You survived crisis. Now you need to survive stability." That sentence stayed with him. Surviving stability. He wasn't used to that. He began therapy quietly, not because he was broken, because he was healing. He talked about the bridge, the hunger, the laughter that hid embarrassment, the fear of invisibility. He realized something profound. He had built systems to protect others, but he hadn't fully protected himself. Healing was unfamiliar territory, but he approached it the same way he approached broken electronics, carefully, patiently, willing to learn. Meanwhile, Mia's social work expanded. She began advocating for housing policy reform. Her voice was different from Adam's, softer but sharper. During one city council meeting, she said, "Housing instability is not a character flaw, it's a structural failure." Adam watched from the back row. He felt proud, not because she was strong, but because she was gentle in her strength. They had both stayed soft. Their mother's lesson had rooted deeply. At 35, Adam did something unexpected. He stepped down as CEO, not fully, but operationally. He transitioned into a strategy role. People were shocked. Why step back when you're winning? Because he wasn't chasing dominance. He was building continuity. He didn't want Second Spark to depend on one survivor's story. He wanted it to outlive him. He hired leaders from within communities served, people who understood the neighborhoods firsthand. Growth slowed temporarily, then stabilized stronger than before. Shared leadership created resilience. One winter evening, snow falling lightly across the city, Adam visited a small neighborhood where Second Spark had installed a community microgrid 5 years earlier. Lights glowed warmly in apartment windows. A small grocery store remained open late, powered affordably. A barber shop had expanded. A daycare center ran evening programs. Stable energy had created ripple effects. He stood across the street quietly. No one recognized him, and that felt good. He wasn't there for applause. He was there to witness impact. The same boy who once folded a thin blanket at 5:30 a.m. now watched neighborhoods glow because of decisions he refused to compromise on. He didn't cry, but his chest felt full, not from hunger, from fulfillment. Years layered gently, not dramatically. No viral scandals, no overnight collapses, no dramatic betrayals. Just consistent building. Consistency doesn't make headlines, but it builds legacies. At 40, Adam visited a high school to speak. A boy approached him afterward. Thin, nervous, determined. "My mom and I live in our car," the boy whispered, "but I'm learning coding online. I don't want to stay stuck." Adam didn't give a speech. He gave the boy a notebook. Inside the cover he wrote, "You are not behind. You are building foundation others skipped." That boy later became a software engineer, working on energy optimization algorithms for Second Spark. The cycle continued. Adam often reflected on one question. What would have happened if he had chosen hardness instead of purpose? He could have chased wealth aggressively. He could have turned pain into bitterness. He could have built walls instead of bridges. But he remembered something clearly. Under that bridge, he didn't dream of revenge. He dreamed of safety. Safety for his sister, for his mother, for himself. Safety became his blueprint. One quiet Sunday, sitting with his mother on a park bench, she asked him, "Are you happy?" He paused. Not because he wasn't, but because happiness had once felt like luxury. "I think I'm peaceful," he said finally. She smiled. Peace lasts longer. She was right. As decades passed, Adam's name faded from trending lists. New founders emerged, new technologies evolved. But in neighborhoods across the country, small plaques remained on solar hubs. Installed by Second Spark Community Initiative. Children grew up with stable electricity. Parents saved on bills. Teenagers learned repair skills. Impact doesn't always scream. Sometimes it hums quietly, like a working power line. One evening, long after his mother had passed peacefully, Adam returned once more to Jefferson Bridge. Older now, calmer. He stood under the concrete structure and closed his eyes. He didn't feel anger. He didn't feel pain. He felt gratitude, because that place had not destroyed him. It had shaped him. And shaping, while painful, can carve strength. He whispered something softly, not to the bridge, to the memory of the boy he once was. "You did enough." Wind moved gently through the space.
cars passed overhead. Life continued. Adam Rivera's story was never about escaping darkness overnight. It was about building light slowly. It was about refusing to let invisibility define worth. It was about staying soft in a world that rewards hardness. It was about turning survival into structure. And most importantly, it was about proving that a child's environment does not dictate their ceiling. Somewhere right now, another child may be calculating costs instead of dreaming freely. Another kid may be pretending not to be hungry. Another 11-year-old may be making promises no child should have to make. If this story reaches them, if it reaches you, let it say this clearly. You are not invisible. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are building. And sometimes the strongest foundations are poured in the hardest seasons. If you stayed through this story, subscribe. Because stories like this don't just fill time.
Time
They
did
remind
not
us what quiet
erase
strength
Adam's
looks like.
sensitivity.
And the world
If
needs more
anything, it
reminders,
sharpened it.
more
At
builders,
42,
more
he
children
no
who grow
longer
into leaders
introduced
without losing their
himself as the
softness.
founder of anything.
And maybe,
When people asked
just
what he
maybe,
did, he would
the
say,
next quiet
"I
child
help
under a bridge
communities stay
is
powered."
already planning something bigger than
sounded
anyone
small.
can see.
It wasn't. Power meant refrigerators running in summer heat. It meant students charging laptops to finish assignments. It meant elderly residents keeping medical equipment functioning overnight. It meant dignity. He understood that now more clearly than ever. One spring morning, Adam received a call from a city official in a coastal region recently devastated by storms. Entire neighborhoods had lost grid access for weeks. Traditional utility companies were overwhelmed. "We need decentralized systems," the official said. "Fast." Adam didn't hesitate. Within 48 hours, mobile microgrids were en route. Solar trailers, battery hubs, portable repair units. He flew out personally, not because he had to, because he remembered what instability feels like. When he arrived, the damage was overwhelming. Homes flooded, debris everywhere, families displaced. Children sat quietly on curbs holding donated blankets. The image hit him harder than expected. It wasn't identical to the bridge, but it echoed. Displacement carries the same look in a child's eyes everywhere. He worked alongside volunteers, installing systems in community centers first. Power returned gradually, not to every home immediately, but enough to stabilize. One night, after 14 hours of fieldwork, he sat on a folding chair outside a shelter, exhausted. A small girl approached him. "Are you the electricity man?" she asked. He smiled softly. "Something like that." She handed him a drawing. It showed a house with bright lights and a sun in the corner. "Thank you," she said simply. Adam looked at the drawing for a long time. No corporate award had ever felt like that. In the months following the storm response, something shifted inside him again. He began seeing energy not just as infrastructure, but as emotional stability. When lights go out, fear grows. When power returns, hope stabilizes. Energy wasn't just technical, it was psychological. That realization sparked a new direction. Second Spark began integrating mental health partnerships into disaster recovery. Power hubs included counseling spaces. Repair workshops doubled as support centers. Community rebuilding was treated holistically. Critics said it was overreach. Adam called it common sense. You can't rebuild systems without addressing trauma. He knew that personally. As he approached 50, Adam's pace slowed slightly. Not in ambition, in presence. He spent more time mentoring, less time negotiating contracts, more time listening to young founders, less time proving himself. One evening, during a mentorship session, a young entrepreneur asked, "How did you handle the anger?" Adam paused. He hadn't spoken about that often. "I didn't ignore it," he said. "I redirected it." The room grew quiet. Anger can either destroy you or focus you. I chose focus. Years earlier, he had feared becoming hard. Now he feared something else, becoming disconnected. Success can create distance from struggle. He actively resisted that. He volunteered anonymously at shelters sometimes. No speeches, no cameras. Just service. Not out of guilt, out of grounding. He needed reminders of where he started, not to romanticize it, but to stay aligned. Mia's work expanded nationally. She pushed for housing reform at federal levels. Together, they formed a nonprofit wing focusing on transitional housing powered by microgrids. Affordable, sustainable, dignified.
They called it SafeSpark. Small apartment clusters with reliable energy, repair training on site, and financial literacy workshops. The first SafeSpark complex opened 23 years after Adam had slept under Jefferson Bridge. During the ribbon-cutting ceremony, he didn't stand in front. He stood to the side, watching families walk through doors. Real doors. Solid doors. With keys. He knew what keys meant. Security. Privacy. Control. A little boy ran down the hallway laughing. That sound echoed in Adam's chest. Not as pain, as closure. At 55, Adam began writing. Not a memoir focused on his struggle, but a manual. Building from scarcity. It wasn't dramatic. It was practical. How to turn limited resources into leverage. How
The
to think
older Adam
long-term during
became,
short-term crisis.
The more he understood
How to
something
build without becoming
uncomfortable.
bitter.
Success
The book quietly
doesn't
gained
silence
traction
your
in schools
past.
and community
It
colleges.
just changes its volume.
Students highlighted passages,
There were nights, even
not
in
because
his
they were
50s,
poetic,
when he would wake
but
up
because they
suddenly,
were honest.
heart racing,
One
convinced
passage read,
for a split second that
"Scarcity
he was still
teaches
under
you
that bridge.
efficiency.
The mind
but abundance
remembers
tests your
what
character.
The body survived.
Learn from both."
He would sit upright,
He believed that
look
deeply.
around his quiet bedroom,
His health forced him to
steady
slow
his
further
breathing,
in his 60s.
and remind himself,
Nothing catastrophic.
"You're safe." Safety was once a dream. Now it was a habit he had to practice believing. Second Spark had expanded internationally by then. Communities in South America, parts of Southeast Asia, and rural Africa were using adapted versions of his modular energy systems. But Adam insisted on one rule everywhere: local leadership first. He refused to export solutions without empowering people to own them, because dependency felt too familiar. He had lived dependency. He had felt what it meant to wait for someone else's decision to determine whether you could eat. He would never recreate that system for someone else. One visit changed him again. In a remote village, he met a boy, maybe 10 years old, repairing a broken solar inverter with tools far too large for his hands. The boy worked quietly, focused. Adam crouched beside him. "Who taught you that?" The boy shrugged, watched videos. Adam smiled faintly. He saw himself. Not in the poverty, not in the struggle, but in the quiet determination. Later that evening, the village leader told Adam, "Before the energy system, children left school early. Now they study at night." That sentence hit him harder than any profit margin. Study at night, because there is light. Something so basic, something he once didn't have reliably, and yet it changes everything. As he entered his 60s, Adam began thinking about legacy differently. Not wealth, not recognition, continuity of compassion. He created an internal mentorship rule inside Second Spark. Every senior leader must mentor 2 young people from unstable backgrounds, not for charity, for investment, because talent is everywhere, stability is not. But life never becomes perfectly smooth. Even at 65, Adam faced betrayal. A trusted executive attempted to redirect community funds toward personal ventures. The discovery hurt deeply, not financially, emotionally. Trust for someone who grew up unstable is sacred. He handled it calmly. Legal processes, internal reforms, transparency. But afterward, he walked alone for hours. He remembered the shelter nights when he slept lightly. Trust had once been survival-based. Now it was strategic, still fragile. He realized something important again. Healing doesn't mean forgetting caution. It means balancing it. Mia once asked him during dinner, "Do you ever wish it had been easier?" He thought for a long time. "Yes," he admitted. "But if it had been easier, I wouldn't understand what I understand." She nodded. They both knew the weight of that truth. They did not glorify hardship, but they acknowledged its shaping power. At 70, Adam stopped giving public speeches entirely. He chose small rooms instead. Classrooms, community centers, workshops. He preferred eye contact over spotlights. In one classroom, a teenage girl raised her hand. "What if you try and still fail?" He answered without hesitation. "Then you try again differently." She frowned slightly. "That's it?" He smiled. "Yes.
Failure is feedback, not identity. That line traveled quietly through social media later. Not viral, but shared meaningfully. Years layered further. Technology evolved. Energy systems became smarter, more automated, more efficient. Second Spark integrated AI diagnostics and predictive maintenance. Adam didn't fully understand all the technical layers anymore, and he was okay with that. He had moved from builder to foundation. Foundations don't need to control every upgrade. They just need to stay strong. One winter evening, snow falling lightly again, Adam sat by his window and reflected on a single question. What was the hardest moment of his life? It wasn't the hunger. It wasn't the shelter. It wasn't the business risks. It was the moment he believed, even briefly, that he didn't matter. That was the most dangerous thought. Because once a child believes they don't matter, they stop building. He wished someone had told his 11-year-old self clearly, "You matter, even when unseen." So he began funding a new initiative, Invisible No More, a youth mentorship network focused not on academic achievement first, but self-worth. Workshops teaching kids how to articulate goals, how to process fear, how to build practical skills alongside emotional resilience. Because he had learned something powerful. Skills build income, but self-worth builds endurance. In his 70s, Adam rarely revisited the bridge physically, but he revisited it mentally often. Not with pain, with perspective. He realized that if someone had rescued him dramatically back then, he might never have built the internal engine he later relied on. He didn't believe suffering is necessary, but he understood adaptation is powerful, and children adapt far more than adults realize. The key is giving them tools before adaptation turns into numbness. He had nearly become numb. He was grateful he didn't. In his final years, Adam moved to a modest house near the coast, not extravagant, just peaceful. He planted a small garden, tomatoes, basil, sunflowers. He liked watching things grow slowly. Growth without urgency felt luxurious. Sometimes neighborhood kids would ask him about the solar panels on his roof. He would explain patiently, not mentioning companies, not mentioning legacy, just explaining how sunlight becomes stored energy. One boy once asked, "Is it magic?" Adam smiled. "No, it's just learning how things work." That had always been his gift. Learning how things work. Systems. People. Pain. Opportunity. He learned how to work with them instead of against them. On a quiet evening, sitting alone with a cup of tea, he wrote one final note in his journal. "I was once afraid of disappearing. Now I understand. Impact is enough." He closed the journal gently. Outside, the lights in the neighborhood closed steadily. Powered. Stable. Reliable. He watched them without fear, without urgency, without anger. Just gratitude. And somewhere right now, not under a bridge necessarily, but maybe in a small apartment, a crowded home, or a quiet bedroom, a child might be questioning their worth. They might be calculating bills, hiding embarrassment, pretending everything is fine. If this story continues to reach them, let it say clearly, your beginning is not your boundary. You are allowed to build slowly. You are allowed to stay soft. You are allowed to succeed without becoming cold. And one day, you might look back at your hardest season and realize it wasn't the end.
There was one memory Adam rarely spoke about. Not the bridge, not the hunger, not even the fear. It was the sound. The sound of traffic above him that first night under Jefferson Bridge. Cars passing, people going somewhere, life continuing, and him paused. That feeling of the world moving forward while you stand still stayed with him longer than poverty ever did. Years later, even as his company expanded across continents, that sound would return in moments of doubt. Success doesn't erase old echoes. It just gives you new rooms to hear them in. In his late 60s, Adam began receiving invitations to elite economic forums, rooms filled with billionaires and policymakers who once would have ignored someone like him. He attended a few, listened more than he spoke. During one discussion on emerging markets and infrastructure dominance, a speaker said, "Low-income communities are untapped revenue pools." Adam felt a quiet discomfort. Revenue pools. He remembered water dripping from cracked concrete above him on rainy nights. He remembered pooling coins on the ground to count them properly. Language matters. When communities become markets first, humanity becomes secondary. When it was his turn to speak, he didn't argue loudly. He simply said, "Communities are not revenue pools. They are ecosystems. If you extract without stabilizing, collapse follows." The room went silent. Not because he was dramatic, because he was experienced. There is a difference. As the years passed, Adam became more interested in teaching systems thinking to teenagers. He believed something deeply. Children from unstable backgrounds are natural strategists. They have to be. They calculate risks early. They observe power structures quickly. They adapt faster than most adults. But no one tells them that those survival skills are transferable. So he began teaching workshops called From Survival to Strategy. He would stand in front of young people and say, "If you've ever had to think 3 steps ahead just to stay safe, you already have executive-level thinking. Now we just refine it." Eyes would widen, because for the first time, someone reframed their struggle as capability. That reframing changed trajectories. One particular boy, Daniel, reminded Adam intensely of himself. Quiet, hyper-aware, always scanning rooms. Daniel rarely spoke, until one day he asked, "What if I don't want to forgive what happened?" Adam did not rush the answer. "You don't have to forgive immediately," he said calmly, "but don't let what happened decide who you become. Forgiveness isn't weakness, but neither is boundaries." Adam understood both now. At 75, Adam walked slower, thought slower, but saw clearer. He realized something profound. The greatest injustice of childhood hardship is not poverty itself. It's the premature loss of innocence. Children forced into adult thinking too early lose something subtle, but some regain it later, through purpose. Adam had regained his. Not fully childlike, but peaceful. He allowed himself small joys now. Morning coffee without agenda. Reading fiction instead of policy briefs. Listening to rain without calculating roofing costs. These was luxuries he once couldn't imagine. He also faced regret. Not major failures, but missed moments. Long nights working when Mia needed Ad emotionally. Short replies to his mother when deadlines pressed. Ambition always cost something. He had paid carefully, but still paid. He wrote letters later. Not apologies, but acknowledgements. Because accountability doesn't end when hardship ends. One evening he visited a Safe Spark housing complex anonymously. He sat in the common courtyard while children played tag. A little girl tripped and started crying. Her mother rushed over immediately, held her, comforted her. Adam watched quietly. That child would not associate nighttime with fear of cold concrete. She would associate it with warm hallways and working lights. He breathed deeply. Cycle interrupted. That mattered more than legacy. Near the end of his life, Adam's perspective shifted once more. He no longer asked, "How can I build more?" He asked, "How can I build less, but better?" He simplified programs, focused on sustainability instead of expansion. He mentored his successors intensely, not on tactics, on values. Never let growth outrun compassion, he told them repeatedly. Because speed can corrupt purpose. He had seen it happen elsewhere. On his final visit to Jefferson Bridge, now surrounded by a well-maintained park and soft lamplight, Adam didn't stand under it. He stood across the street. He didn't need proximity anymore. Memory was enough. He closed his eyes briefly. He didn't see the scared boy now. He saw the determined one. The one who had said quietly, "I'll fix this." That promise had traveled decades. Across cities. Across lives. Across systems. Not perfectly. Not without error. But consistently. And consistency is stronger than intensity. In his last journal entry, written shakily but clearly, he wrote, "Strength is staying kind when you could justify being hard." That sentence summarized everything. The hunger. The bridge. The business. The reforms. The healing. Kindness is not weakness. It is disciplined power. When Adam Rivera finally passed, it wasn't dramatic. No tragic headlines. No public spectacle. Just quiet. The way he preferred.
In the weeks after, small stories surfaced online. A mechanic who learned repair skills at 12 and now owns 3 shops. A social worker who found housing because of SafeSpark. A former inmate who now trains youth instead of reoffending. A coastal village with stable power 10 years after a storm. None of them used grand language. They said simple things like, "He changed my life." And perhaps that is the highest measure. Not how loud your story becomes, but how many others continue because of it. And maybe right now, there is someone listening who feels unseen. Someone who feels behind. Someone who thinks their circumstances define their ceiling. If this story continues to reach you, remember this clearly. Hard beginnings do not cancel strong futures. You are not disqualified by struggle. You are trained by it. Stay soft. Stay learning. Stay building. Because somewhere in your life, there will be a moment, quiet and ordinary, when you look back and realize, you didn't just survive, you transformed. And that transformation will echo longer than any bridge ever could.